Hey everyone, top 3 photos, part 12. Have you guys seen it? Because we haven't.
All right, let's jump into it.
Today, I'm going to share with you 3 progressively more disturbing stories, and at the end of each of them, I'm going to share with you the picture that is famously associated with them. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in
What am I doing
story
to the
format,
like button?
then you
What
come
do we
to the
gotta
right channel,
do?
because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please take 3 pigs and label them 1, 2, and 4, and release them on the like button's property. Also subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you
I
don't
think somebody
miss
actually
any of
did
my
that.
weekly uploads.
What do you mean?
All right,
high
let's get
school.
into today's
I feel like
stories.
I've heard that story before.
Pigs just running around in high school?
Well, yeah, but they they numbered them, so then they would think that there's a third pig, even though they skipped like 1, 2, 4.
Oh.
They would just run around the whole building, and like all the teachers were like, "Where is it?" At least I think it happened.
Silly.
It's like the most generic, basic like joke you could do.
Yeah.
"66-year-old Geraldine Largay was nicknamed Inchworm by her friends for her hilariously slow hiking pace. But her slow pace didn't stop her from doing the thing that she loved, which was to hike. And in fact, on April 23rd, 2013, Geraldine, along with one of her close friends, Jane Lee, decided to embark on this nearly 1,000-mile-long hike through the Appalachian Trail. Geraldine's husband of 42 years, his name was George, he planned to drive ahead of the pair and meet them at prearranged spots along this 1,000-mile-long journey to give them supplies, and would occasionally bring them to a motel so they could shower and sleep in a bed.
Wow,
By
what a
June
guy.
30th,
Nice.
so more than 2 months after they had started this journey, Jane finds out that she has a family emergency and she isn't able to continue this hike. Geraldine decided she was going to finish what she started on her own, despite the fact that realistically she hated hiking alone. She was very scared, frankly, of being out in the wilderness by herself. But she only had about 200 miles left, and so she figured, what the heck, I'll finish this.
I don't know, 200 miles is a pretty fucking far distance.
Yeah. It took them, what do you say, 2 or 3 months to do 800 miles?
Yeah.
It'd take you at least half a month to do that. Alone?
Oh yeah.
thing out on my
And she's
own.
slow.
Later,
Tap out.
Jane would tell investigators that when she left the trail to handle this family emergency, she felt like Geraldine was a little bit in over her head. She was someone that just didn't do well hiking on her own, and she still had 200 miles to go.
Yeah.
But Jane just had too much going on in her life, and so she didn't stick around to try to convince Geraldine to come with her. Instead, she said, "Best of luck, Geraldine, and I'll see you at the end." So for the
Jeez.
next 3 weeks, Geraldine carried on down the Appalachian Trail on her own. And by all accounts, it was going really well. She was checking in with her family and saying, "This is the mile mark I'm at." And she was making all her rendezvous points with George to get resupplied and to go to the motel with him. And so everything was going great. Then on July 22nd, Geraldine would send a text message to her husband, George, saying that she thinks she's in some trouble and that she lost the trail and is now lost. And she
God.
asked him to call the Appalachian Mountain Club and see if they had a trail maintainer that could come out and look for her and kind of get her back on track. The problem was Geraldine couldn't get these text messages to go through. There was very bad service where
Oh,
she was.
no.
So she begins to walk to higher ground to try to get a better cell phone signal. And so she goes up this hill and she repeatedly tries to send these text messages out to George to say, "I'm lost and I need help," but none of them were going through. She would spend the whole night trying to send text messages from this mountain before finally putting her sleeping bag down and sleeping for the night. The next morning she got up and she sent another text message, this one a little bit more urgent, to her husband. She told him that she was lost since yesterday and was off the trail 3 or even 4 miles and that he should now call the police.
Ugh.
But
Crap.
that message also failed. And so none of her messages over the past 24 hours have been sent out. And so nobody knows that she's lost. But at some point that day, she decides, I'm going to just put my phone away, save the battery life, and just wait. Because I'm supposed to meet my husband today, and when I don't show up, he's going to call authorities. They're going to come looking for me, and everything will be fine. She
Plot twist. Does it? That would be so fucked.
leaves the mountain and finds this area underneath a couple of trees that had some pine needles on the ground. It was relatively soft. She set up her tent underneath these trees. She hangs a silver reflective blanket up over one of the trees to try to signal to helicopters or anybody flying overhead.
Smart.
She even began burning some bark to create a smoke signal, and she proceeded to wait. And sure enough, later that day, George, who's waiting at the rendezvous point for his wife, she doesn't show up, and he immediately contacts the authorities, who launch a huge search to go find Geraldine. Tragically, Geraldine was actually only about a mile, maybe 2 miles off of the trail. So she was not far from where she needed to be.
Damn.
But because it was so densely forested, she had no way of knowing that, and sound didn't travel very well. So over the course of the next 2 weeks, as this huge surge of helicopters and planes and people on horseback and hunters and all these people in the area, they didn't find her. They might have come very close to her without knowing it, but again, because it was so densely forested, they never linked up. So on August 4th, about 2 weeks into this big search, they end up scaling it back and say, sorry, but we can't find her. The whole time this is going on, Geraldine stays at her campsite. She doesn't go anywhere. She figures, this is my best chance to survive. And she's staying very positive. She has this journal that every day she would write inside of it a daily observation, and she would also write letters to her family. All of these messages were incredibly positive. She was very much expecting to be rescued and would have this great story to tell. But as days went on and no one was finding her, you could tell in her writing that she had come to terms with the reality that she was not going to make it out of here alive. And so before she died, she wrote this beautiful message to her husband and to her daughter. When you find my body, please call my husband George and my daughter Carrie. It will be the greatest kindness for them to know that I am dead and where you found me. No matter how many years from now, please find it in your heart to mail the contents of this bag to one of them. 2 years later, a forester would be in the area and would come across Geraldine's tent that was now crumpled and collapsed. And inside, he would find Geraldine inside of her sleeping bag with the journal over her chest. And inside the tent, she'd kept it neat and clean all the way to the very end. This is someone that went out with absolute grace. Back on July 22nd, 2013, the day Geraldine would go missing, she woke up and she was all smiles and motivated to start the day. She heads off down the Appalachian Trail at about 6:30 in the morning, and she passes by another hiker who stops Geraldine, and apparently this hiker saw Geraldine's smile and said it was so infectious that she had to take a picture of her. And so Geraldine laughed and posed for this picture. After the picture was taken, the women laughed about it and then went their separate ways. And then by 11 a.m. that morning, Geraldine was lost.
Why was that one of the saddest stories I feel like we've ever heard?
Because it was such a nice person.
Oh, God. She just like starved to death.
That's sad.
And she was so close to the trail.
I think like, especially like with these thick, dense forest like hikes, like I feel like you need a partner.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know. Somehow she lost the trail. And I don't know how like, so you know how, like some trails are like really well walked through, so you can clearly see it. Like at what point did she like cross over rocks that kind of gave her like the wrong direction? Like it's so like anything could have happened that she could have lost the trail.
Plus, like to your point, like if you're hiking alone, you're like maybe just looking down and focusing, and your mind's drifting, thinking about all the things.
Oh yeah.
Then you look up and you're like, where the fuck did I end up?
I done hiking once where like we were on a trail, and at some points like you're just so focused on just keeping a pace and not thinking about how grueling the hike is that you don't even think about like, oh, which direction are we going in the right direction? And then it's like by the time you realize like, oh, where am I? Like it's too late. Oof.
On August 20th, 1989, Eric and Lyle Menendez returned home to their family's mansion in Beverly Hills and knew right away something was wrong. The driveway gate was unlocked, and then they went to their front door and it was already open. They pushed the door open and cautiously walked inside and saw there was blood on the ground, and looked in their TV room, and there, slouched against the couch, was their father, Jose, and their mother, Kitty. They'd both been executed. Eric and Lyle are beside themselves. They called the police, and they're in total hysterics,
the Menendez
screaming
brothers.
for the officers to get there.
The Menendez brothers? I don't know anything about this. This will be fun.
That someone's killed their parents. The police show up, they go inside, and just based on the brutality of the injuries, Jose and Kitty had clearly been gunned down with shotguns and multiple blasts. Because pieces of them were missing. They were just totally destroyed. The police, because of that, assumed this has got to be a mob hit. There is some real aggression here. This is not an accident. This is a statement. The police immediately turned to Jose's business. He was the CEO of this very prominent media company. He had made millions and millions of dollars. He was very well connected, and they figured that somewhere in his dealings there must have been a bad actor that was after him. And so for the first 6 months of the investigation, the focus was almost exclusively on Jose's business contacts. Meanwhile, Lyle and Eric seemed to go totally crazy. They immediately inherited the $14 million family estate, and there was this huge cash payout right up front. And so the two of them go on this insane spending spree over those first 6 months. They bought condos on the water, they bought cars and Rolexes, they bought a chicken wing shop for $550,000.
What?
I mean, they were just buying things left and right. During their parents' funeral, Lyle was overheard talking about how he can't wait to go to the US Open, and look, I just bought a new Rolex. His mind was not...
Damn, if I'd never seen a villain in my life, that man is the literal definition of what a villain looks like.
Yeah, right.
Like, bro, how you walking behind your parents' casket with a fucking shit-eating grin like that?
Well, that's a stock photo.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Sorry, my bad. I just got real upset because I'm like, how you gonna look like that?
Yeah, but no, he does look like a villain.
But that photo right there,
it kind
like,
of looks like a vampire to me.
Whoever got that photo got the shit under the stick. Should buy the rights to that photo and burn it because that's a fucking evil photo.
On the
What
fact
the
that his
fuck?
parents had just been savagely murdered. It was on what fun thing am I going to do with my money next? After the funeral, Eric decided he was going to put his energy into becoming a professional tennis player. So for $60,000, he hires a tennis player to live at his house and work with him every day on tennis, even though realistically Eric was not a very good tennis player. But that was his focus. That's what he was going to work on. And Lyle spent most of his time building a team of people that could help him make investments into different companies.
Bro, this isn't suspicious at all.
Yeah.
But in addition to spending tons of money on their respective career interests, the brothers were also going to therapy sessions. And during one particular closed-door session, Eric would tell his therapist that me and my brother actually killed our parents. Eric clearly believed that he was able to talk to a therapist about anything and nothing would escape this room, that it was totally confidential. But what Eric wasn't planning for is the therapist's assistant was outside the doors walking by and overheard Eric say.
Oh, no way.
Dude, what the fuck?
No way.
Wow.
I feel like the therapist would still say something, though. Like, if someone told you that they murdered their parents, I feel like you have to be like, yeah, that's not like a secret I keep.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I botched this last time, but was it like client privilege or whatever?
You did it again.
I did it again, right?
Patient
client privilege is whatever.
No, clients are for lawyers.
Whatever the fuck it's called. Whenever the fucking guy therapist can't say anything, it's like, I gotta look it up now because this is like the second time it's come up.
Yeah.
I need to know what are the rule breaks that have to happen for them to have to like disclose it. Because how many of these people are just so comfortable that they're like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so I just killed someone.
Yeah, you're not gonna tell anybody, but
yeah,
I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah. It's just like, I understand that therapy is supposed to be the safe place, but at the same time, like, at some point, there's a level of comfort where you're just like, yeah, so like, we've been talking to each other for a while, and I just want to let you know that I did murder someone. Like, what? Why would you do that? What?
The police would confront Eric as well as Lyle, and very quickly Eric and Lyle would confess. During their confession, they told investigators that on August 18th, they went out and purchased 2 shotguns and they stored them.
Now there he looks like a villain.
The next day, on August 19th, the brothers and their mom and dad go out on a fishing trip together the whole day. They come back, and then on August 20th, the 2 brothers retrieve their shotguns while the parents are sitting in the TV room, and they walk in and fire 15 shots into their parents' apartment.
Fucking nuts.
Afterwards, the brothers would ditch their shotguns and bloody clothes, and they would go to the movie theater and they would watch Batman. After the movie was over, they go back to the mansion knowing exactly what they're going to find, and they go in and they put on this big performance. Oh my goodness, someone killed our parents! But it was all a lie because they killed their parents for their money. Eric and Lyle were given life sentences and were sent to separate prisons, but actually just recently they were reunited in the same jail. 30 years after
Wow.
their prime, a guy who collected NBA trading cards was rooting through some of his older cards, and he came across the
Oh,
Mark
shit,
Jackson
no
1990
way.
card. And he noticed in the background of the picture, sitting courtside,
Wow.
is none other than
That's
Eric and Lyle
crazy.
Menendez. It was during that 6-month crazy spending spree after they had murdered their parents, when they were going around buying up whatever they wanted, and they had bought courtside tickets to that particular game, and they happened to be immortalized on this playing card.
Wow.
Now that is like a 1 in a million chance.
Right?
Like, how are you going to be on a basketball card
Yeah.
after you murdered your parents? Ugh.
Known as the Grizzly Man, Timothy Treadwell
Grizzly
was,
Man.
above all else, a huge bear enthusiast. His
Oh,
passion
no.
for these creatures led to a passion
We've
for
heard this before.
environmentalism and for documentary filmmaking, the subject of which were the grizzly bears of Katmai National Park in Alaska. And so starting in the late 1980s, Treadwell began going to Katmai National Park and setting up a camp there for the whole summer and filming all of his interactions with the grizzly bears. During the first half of the summer, Treadwell would stay in an area that he referred to as the Grizzly Sanctuary. It was this area near Hallow Bay. It was this big open green field. And all the grizzly bears seemed to just converge on this one area and kind of mosey around and be lazy. They were not aggressive at all towards Treadwell, and so he could walk up fairly close to them and just shoot great
Dude, no
huge
way.
animals.
Aren't
During
grizzlies
the second half of
the most dangerous?
I don't know. We watched a video on sloth bears. I think they're worse, but I don't know.
summer, he would leave the Grizzly Sanctuary and go south to an area called Kaflia Bay. And then it was a much more densely forested area with lots of grizzly bear trails. Treadwell could use vegetation to get right up close to some of these bears without them necessarily seeing him. He referred to this area as the Grizzly Maze. Treadwell developed a fairly bad reputation amongst the park rangers of Katmai National Park because he was pretty reckless about how he interacted with these animals. I mean, they are big, wild predators, and he would get right up close and in their personal space, and every time he was just rolling the dice because eventually they thought something bad was going to happen to him.
Yeah.
Treadwell believed he was taking every precaution and that what he was doing was safe. But Treadwell had become very emotionally connected to the grizzly bears he was seeing at Katmai National Park. He felt so comfortable with them that he would actually walk up sometimes and pet and goof around with the bear cubs. And for whatever reason, the grizzly bear parents would not harm him. And so he felt like he was kind of one of them, and they respected him and they welcomed him into their environment. Normally, whenever Treadwell went to Alaska for the summer, he would go alone. It was just him and his camera. But at the end of the summer, in October 2003, when normally Timothy would leave Alaska, because October is the time when the grizzlies become more aggressive because they're trying to eat as much food as they can before going into hibernation, Timothy decides that instead of leaving, he's going to extend his stay one more week, and he's going to fly his girlfriend, Amy Huguenard, into Alaska to spend that week with him.
No!
Friends and family did not think this was a good idea, but Timothy was like, nope, it's going to be just fine. I know these animals better than anybody else. They are not going to hurt us.
Your girlfriend
so he
doesn't?
flies Amy in, and they set up camp along a grizzly trail inside of the Grizzly Maze. Neither of them were carrying a weapon or...
Within the maze?
It's just...
The girl who doesn't play with bears, you're just going to put her in the middle of a bunch of bears?
Well, he also doesn't realize that this is the time of year that the grizzly bears...
No, I think he does realize.
Well, no.
He just doesn't care.
I mean, he's the bear whisperer.
Yeah.
And he can, like, communicate with bears.
or bear repellent spray. A week later, when the pilot returned to pick up Timothy and Amy, he looked up the hill and he could clearly see their campsite was not broken down. They had not packed it up yet. They were not down at the shoreline. So he gets out of his plane and he starts walking up the hill towards their campsite, thinking maybe they lost track of time. Maybe they don't know they're getting picked up today. And as he crests the hill, he sees there is a huge grizzly bear pacing around as if guarding its prey in the middle of this campsite.
Oof.
The grizzly sees the pilot and makes a move as if he's going to run towards him. The pilot turns, runs back to his plane, and flies out of there. And he calls park rangers and alerts them to this grizzly bear that's in the middle of Timothy and Amy's campsite. When the park rangers finally arrived and made their way up to the campsite, they could tell right away that Timothy and Amy were deceased. Their remains were scattered all around the campsite.
Jesus.
It was clear that a grizzly bear or more than one grizzly bear had absolutely ripped them to pieces. However, this wasn't even the most horrifying part of this discovery. As the bodies were being taken away, the park rangers began bundling up their stuff to take with them, and they found inside the tent a camera that had a 6-minute tape on it. At first, when they hit play, they thought it was a blank tape, but it wasn't. It was just inside the tent when it was recording, and so it had no visual, but then they started hearing audio. And for 6 agonizing minutes with a blank screen, they heard crystal clear audio of Timothy and Amy being eaten alive.
Oh my God.
The audio suggests that Treadwell had left their tent because they heard a bear outside and was attacked. And he starts screaming for Amy to come outside. The bear has Timothy's head in its jaws, and Timothy is screaming, "It's killing me, it's killing me." And Amy is screaming back, "Play dead." And at some point, it's clear that's not working. They have no way to fight the animal. And Timothy starts yelling for Amy to run away. She's paralyzed with fear. She's screaming at the top of her lungs. And then Timothy is groaning and screaming. And eventually it stops when he drags Timothy away. And then Amy doesn't try to run away. She's just kind of frozen in terror. And you hear the bear come back. And then her screams pick up. And then the tape goes quiet. This is the last picture of Timothy and Amy taken alive. It was taken right after Amy had landed in Alaska, and they were going to make their way up to the Grizzly Maze and camp out there for a few days in hopes of running into a grizzly bear. So that's going to do it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's.
Well, like, you know how that story's going to end. It still sucks. Like, obviously we're watching MrBallen, so I know how it's going to end. Like, you don't camp in the middle of grizzlies in their feeding season.
Remember that one story where like the polar bears were like, and they were like camped right near polar bears?
They had the 1-foot high barrier fence. Yeah, I remember that.
It just reminds me of that, where people are just like, you can have all the warnings in the world, but some people just feel like they've like transcended, like the bears, like he's just walking around bear neighborhood and he's like, "Oh, hey there, like Yogi," and just like, "Oh yeah, what's up?"
Well, yeah, to your point, he thinks he's like the bear whisperer.
So like he probably saw that bear and was like, "Hey, like you remember me, right? I've been here all
I've been playing with your kids."
Yeah, I was hanging out with the little cubs the other day, and then they were just, that bear was just like, "Bro,
oh, I remember.
I'm hungry. I need to eat. I'm gonna take a nap."
Jeez.
Ugh, so sad. Well, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye.